Welcome back to another video. My name's Stephen Milner and I'm a landscape photographer who shoots analog film, and in today's video we're going to be taking a look at the Sekonic L-858D. Now, I've used this light meter for about a year now, primarily for landscape photography using film, and I've got some things I want to share with you about it. I think it's a great light meter, but it's also got some things that I think could have been done a bit differently. So in today's video we're going to go through and talk about the specifications. I've got a bit of a list here on my iPad. Then I'm going to go through and give you a bit of a brief overview and show you some of the functionalities and how to use it. Then I'm going to talk about things that I really like about it, but I'm also going to give you a bit of an insight into some of the things that I think could have been done a little bit differently. So in terms of the specifications, I've got some notes here on my iPad. I'm just going to run through these very quickly. So in terms of the cost of this light meter, it is $600 US, which I think is quite reasonable for a brand new light meter. It has a retractable Lumisphere, which is this thing here on the top, and it's for incident metering and ambient flash metering, which is great. I don't use flash, but sounds good. It has a 1 degree spot meter with a viewfinder, and that is this thing here, these optical things, and you look through it like this and you pick out what you want to take a meter of, and it's 1 degree of accuracy. So when they released this light meter, they did some upgrades, which is great. They added 3 stops of light capability, measuring capability in low light situations, which I think is really good. It has a measuring range of -5 to 22.9 EV at ISO 100. So just to put that in perspective, I was out last night taking some meter readings in the dark with this light meter. I had it set to ISO 100 at f8, and I was just going around metering, and where it was really dark, where there's no visible detail whatsoever, it wouldn't take a reading. But there, where there was just a glimpse of light, just a tiny bit, it would take a reading. And in that situation, with those settings, I was getting exposure time of 2 minutes. It has a luminance range of 0.1 to 2 million lux. I don't really know what that means. It sounds like something that's for video photography. It has sign and video settings, great if you're into that. It will measure flash duration measurements, and it will analyze the flash, which is great. It displays it in a bit of a histogram, so you can get a visual kind of view on what the flash is doing. It has a 2.7 inch touchscreen on the front here, which is how you primarily operate that. It's only got 4 buttons on here. We'll go through that in a second. Everything else is done through the touchscreen. And in the back of the light meter here, you can put a radio module, which is similar to the 758D. If you're operating in a studio and you want to operate a flash, you can do it remotely. And it takes two AA batteries, which I thought was quite a good upgrade, because AA batteries are far more accessible than the previous batteries in the 758D. So that's some of the specifications. I'm going to go through now and give you a bit of an overview of this light meter. So this is the light meter here. It's quite a nice little design. And here's the power button. You just hold that and it'll boot up. And just to go over the outside of the light meter here, we've obviously got the power button here, we've got the Lumisphere here, which is retractable, which comes in and out and fully rotates. Here we have the spot meter and a cap. Here you can screw in an adapter that will take filters, and this is the area where you look through, and it's got an adjustable diopter. Just moving down here, that's the meter reading button for when you're using the spot meter here, and also this, and that is the memory button. You can change those in the settings so they work the other way around. Here we have a USB connection for updating the firmware and also changing the settings in the camera. Here we have the menu button. Here we have a flash sync, and here we have a tripod mount on the back, and on the back we've obviously got the battery case. It's nice and secure, comes out. We've got 2 AA batteries and where you put in the wireless device. So if we go into the menu settings before, the display does actually illuminate, and here you can set your analog scale. I have mine set to EV scale, and you can go into custom settings and function buttons. They're on the display, the set itself. So these are the custom buttons down here, so you can set those. There's lots of settings in here you can change, so you can really set it up however you want to do that. Exposure profile, so you can load your own profiles. There's frame rate and shutter angles that you can go through and add. You can add filters, so this is quite a nice new upgrade. So you can go through and add in the filters that you use, and then add in what density they are, how much in stops, they reduce the light coming into the lens. And then you've just got information about the light meter itself, regulations, not really important. And yeah, and that's essentially the main settings. And as I said, you can hook this up to your computer with this USB port here, and we'll do that shortly. We'll jump online and I'll show you the software, and we'll go through the settings in a little bit more detail. And you can basically just go in and set them. You can set them on your computer, and then it just pushes them across onto the light meter. So this is the main display area here. We've got ISO, which is tap. You can tap. You can also press and pull, or push. So same with the f-stop. I don't know if you can hear that, but it sounds like the neighbours are playing on a quad. Never mind. Here you can set whether you want to do aperture priority or shutter time priority. I have mine set to aperture. Here you have the meter reading, so if I press the measure button there, it will take a reading. I can show you that. Here is the average setting, and we'll talk about that in a second. And here we have the settings. So set average, that's set to the main display, so we don't need to talk about that. You can change from spot to incident. You can set your exposure compensation, so you can go in and add exposure compensation. This is where you select your filters, so you can go in and you just basically select the filter that you want to use, and then it applies it. And when you apply it, you have a little reading, a little number up here that tells you how many stops has been added to the measurement. In mid-tone, you can set that. This is not a feature that I use. You can set your exposure profile and memory clear, memory recall. It can hold up to a number of different meter readings, quite a few. I only ever take about 3 anyway, 2 really, so I've never really tested that fully. What else have we got? So yeah, we take a reading. We just take a reading there, and then we press this one here. That stores it, and then if we take another reading, and then we can store that one. You can see down here on the EV scale, it will show you where the meter readings are, and the red little indicator, if you can see that, actually tells you the last one, and then you can average them out. And as you can see, it's showing you in stops, so there's 4 stops there. So then once you've averaged it out, you can go through and hold down, this one here, hold down the meter reading, and then you can evaluate. So it will give you, based on where you've got the 1 degree spot meter, it will show you what the EV value is based on the meter reading that you've just taken. And then you can unaverage that, and then you can clear it with the press of that button there. Just in terms of, so the options for custom settings, function button 1, these are your options. So you can have average on off, you can change the incident or the spot meter, you can have exposure compensation add, filter compensation add, mid-tone, and memory clear. I have mine set to memory clear, because if you don't, then it's quite cumbersome, because you'll take a reading, like that for example, you've got average, and then you'll change your position, you'll want to do another reading, and you have to go in here, down there, and then press memory clear, and then press all, and it's really slow. So I've added that in here. Yeah, so I think that's pretty much it. I don't really use any of the other settings, to be fair. I use filters, I use the average function, I use the spot meter function, and yeah, that's it. It works exactly the same way whether you're using the spot meter or the Lumisphere here. You can go through and take readings and add them. Yeah, and you can set these up to 1/3 stop increments, or half stop increments, or a full stop increment. And yeah, so that's it. That's a brief overview of the actual unit itself. So here we have the Sekonic L-858D software loaded onto my iMac, and you can see it's a fairly simple piece of software. And there's 4 tabs here. And the first tab is the exposure profile. This is where you can add in the exposure profiles that you have created for your light meter, for the film that you're using, or for the environment that you work in. These are the settings that you can apply, and there are a number of settings. Quite annoyingly that when you come out of these that it goes back to the start one, so I'm not going to go through them all, but I will drop down these settings here, and as you can see, these are the settings that I use. So I will just scroll through these slowly, and if you want to copy them, feel free to do so. There's not many, to be fair. It's fairly basic to set up. And here we have some more settings that you can go in. These are the custom settings, so if you do frame rates, you can go in and add those. The shutter angle, if you're using that for film, for movies that is. And here we have the filters that you can go in and select, and as you can see here, as we drop down, I've been in there and I've added some of the filters that I use, and there's quite a few in here. There are some that are already preset in there, as you can see, like some of these down here, like a circular polarizer. Mine adds, 2 stops, so it's fairly simple to go in and just set that up. And then over here we have where you check for the update on the software, but also the light meter itself, and you just come in here, and every time you need to do an update, you can do that here. So it's fairly simple. Where it gets a bit more complicated is when you create your own profiles, advanced mode, and yeah, you can go in and you can select the targets that you're going to use. I've never done this, I don't really know how to use it, so I'm not really going to spend much time talking about it. If you do, perhaps leave a comment down below. You can view profiles, and yeah, so you can basically see it in a graph format. So as I was saying before, you can load in a film, for example, say Fuji LV50, and it has 5 stops of dynamic range, and you can go in and you can add that in. It'll tell you the clipping point and yeah, and the dynamic range overall. I haven't played around with this too much, but this is where you can view them once they've been created, and you can then go in and edit them as well. But again, I haven't played around with this, but it's got lots of customization for profiles, but the only thing it doesn't have is customization for reciprocity. So now I'm going to go through and talk about what I liked about this spot meter, and what I did like was the increase of the 3-stop in low light performance. So previously I had the 758D light meter, and what I noticed is that quite often when I was shooting sunrise and sunsets, particularly in the twilight hour, just before sunrise or just after sunset, the light meter would really, that 758D light meter would really struggle. So that was the main reason why I moved to that light meter, and I have to say that extra 3 stops does actually help quite a bit. I really appreciate all weather construction. With my old light meter, it was always a worry about it getting wet, but with this one I just don't have to worry about that. And I really liked how they included the AA batteries. That's a really good upgrade, I think. Those batteries are far more accessible. And I like it how you can program in the filters. That wasn't an option on the 758D. You can go in and add in those filters, which I think is really neat. So in terms of the things that I think that can be done differently, I don't think the touchscreen works that well in cold temperatures. There's been a number of times where I've been setting up a new composition and I'm trying to change my settings, and the light's fleeting, and the light meter's the screen freezes because of the temperature, and it's really frustrating. I did notice on my last vlog, I did a trip up to Mount Tongariro, and I'll put a link if you want to watch that, where I use that light meter. It was a very cold, the altitude was 1500, 1700 meters. There was lots of snow, it was very cold, and this light meter, the batteries failed, and that's the first time it's happened. And I've heard other people say this about this light meter, is that the batteries do run out quite quickly, and the battery indicator is not that accurate. It fluctuates. I've been looking at the light meter today, and 1 minute it's got 2 bars, which is the third, and then the next minute it's full, which is 3 bars. So it could be more accurate. I did find the 758D easy to use because of the touchscreen, and I don't think that the touchscreen itself is set up as well as it could be. It's not as efficient as it could be. There's quite a lot of space on that screen, and I think that there could be other function buttons on there. For example, add an exposure compensation. You know, when I had the 758D, you would do your meter readings, you would average it out, and it was very easy just to add exposure compensation because you could set it up in the menu. You would press the ISO button and you would rotate the dial, and you could add up to 9 stops of exposure compensation. You can't do that on here. You have to go in and into the menu, and you have to add in your filters, or you have to go in and add exposure compensation. I just think if there was another button on the touchscreen that allowed you to do that very quickly, I think that would be a huge improvement. There is another way of doing it. You could add the exposure compensation by going up and down on the ISO setting or up and down on your aperture setting. That would be another quick way of doing it. You'll have seen from the software that you use to set the settings and update the firmware that you can go in and you can program the light meter for different profiles for different situations. You can go in and you can set up profiles for the films you use, and you can determine and you can measure the dynamic range of your films, and you can program them in, and it'll give you a warning when you're taking meter readings and you're going out of the dynamic range of your film. But one missed opportunity that I think that they could have added into this light meter was the ability to add reciprocity times onto a film profile. So for example, you could go in and you could load a profile, profile for Velvia 50 for example, and you can set the dynamic range to 4 stops, and you can go in and you can set up the reciprocity time to be added at 1/3 stop increments from 2 seconds, and that would have been a great feature, and you could do that for all your films, and it just would have saved time. So I think there's a real missed opportunity. I think it would be quite easy for Sekonic to make that upgrade because they already have the software there and the ability to do it. The only difference being is that instead of adding the time increment, you're adding an ISO increment. So yeah, I do find that it's quite easy to accidentally adjust the screen. Quite often I'll be putting it in my pocket and I'll put it out and I'll take a reading, and then in some cases I've done an exposure on my film and then looked at the light meter and realised that I'd accidentally adjusted the ISO or the f-stop a bit. And you can actually lock the screen by holding down the menu button, but it locks the full screen. I think it could have been quite good just to be able to lock the aperture and the time, or the time and the ISO, or whatever it is, however you set it up. If you could, lock aperture and ISO and just be able to use it, I think that would have been great, and it would prevent those misreadings. I think it would have been quite good to have a version without the Luma sphere on the top of the, this white thing on the top, because I don't use this as and I don't think many landscape photographers do. I think it would have been quite good to just have one without that, and you just have the spot meter. That would have been quite a nice option. So that's it for today's review of the Sekonic 858D light meter. I do hope you found that useful. Please leave a comment down below and I will respond. If you've got any questions, please do that. Please give it a thumbs up if you liked it. And yeah, appreciate the time you watching the video. Please subscribe to my channel and check out some of my videos where I shoot out in the field using this light meter with film. And yeah, hope to see you next time. Bye for now. Take care.